It's Monday, September 27th, 2010. In this week's BeakerBeat, let the finger-pointing begin. It's a he said, she said in the J&J recall mess, and guess who else is now being scrutinized? Plus, Avandia could soon be a collector's item as it's being yanked from the shelves. We'll tell you where. And your body could soon power medical devices, even if you're lazy. All that and more on this week's edition of BeakerBeat. Hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of BeakerBeat. I'm Mike Justice, thanks for tuning in. Last week we told you about heads beginning to roll at Johnson & Johnson as investigators dig deeper into their recall issues. Now it's getting more interesting. Johnson & Johnson claims the FDA knew about its phantom recall all along. The company's widespread product recalls have been well documented. Now details are emerging as to how J&J managed the crisis, including whether the FDA knew about it. Lawyers for J&J claim the FDA knew about the so-called phantom recall, secretly pulling packets of Motrin from store shelves rather than announcing it publicly. But the lawyers, responding to demands from a congressional panel investigating the case, say they have no documents proving the FDA knew about it. However, there are emails obtained by the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform in which an executive of J&J's McNeil Consumer Medicines Unit described an agreement with the FDA authorizing J&J to conduct an unpublicized recall of adult Motrin. It reads, quote, "We have negotiated agreement with FDA not to formally conduct a recall for Motrin, but rather conduct a soft market withdrawal. This is a major win for us as it limits the press that will be seen." End quote. The FDA again maintained their innocence, claiming that they did not sign off on and were not aware of McNeil's phantom recall.
What you talking about, Willis?
J&J executives, led by consumer head Colleen Goggins, told lawmakers during a congressional hearing in May that the company did not try to hide its Motrin recall plans from the FDA. Mrs. Goggins has since announced her retirement and departure from the company. But the FDA's story conflicts with documents the J&J attorneys turned over to officials that show the FDA received two brief company reports about the effort. Now, what role, if any, the FDA played in the recall has become a central part of the committee's probe. Simply put, both J&J and the FDA are in the crosshairs of congressional investigators as their stories conflict. So, of course, this story is far from over. There are a lot of looming questions on the horizon as well. For example, will there be any criminal charges in this investigation? And will CEO Bill Weldon maintain his position as CEO after all this is over? We shall see. There is a hearing scheduled for September 30th, and Mr. Weldon will be there. So tell us what you think about this story or any story that you see in today's show. It's very simple. Click on the orange button below me. A box will pop up. Type in your comment. I promise I'll read and respond to every one of them. And when you're done watching BeakerBeat, check out Beaker's blog where we ask, has science made embryonic stem cell research obsolete? Plus, biofuels are called into service by Uncle Sam. See how one biotech company is literally a driving force for the U.S. Navy. And Medtronic's top man talks about deflation and the future of the medical device industry. All that and more on Beaker's blog.
But you know the funniest thing about Europe is?
What?
It's the little differences. You know what they call a quarter pounder with cheese in Paris?
They don't call it a quarter pounder with cheese?
Oh man, they got the metric system.
And what do they call it?
They call it Royale with cheese.
Royale with cheese.
That's right.
We call it a quarter pounder with cheese. They like to call it a Royale with cheese. They like to start world wars and we like to finish them. We believe in hygiene, them not so much. Yes, the Americans and Europeans are very different, and that goes for our medicines too. The FDA and European Medicines Agency, in decisions that have been highly anticipated for months now, delivered the news on Avandia. Calling the drug's cardiovascular safety, quote, an open question, the FDA says it will allow Avandia to remain on the market, but under a new, as-yet-to-be-designed restricted access program. The risk management plan would require a risk assessment of each patient, documentation that it's Avandia the patient really needs, and enrollment by doctors, pharmacists, and patients. EMA came to a different conclusion, saying that because Avandia was already subject to various restrictions, the agency couldn't identify any further measures that would reduce risk. So Avandia and two sister medications will no longer be available in Europe within a few months. Avandia has been under fire since May 2007 when Cleveland Clinic cardiologist Steve Nissen authored a now notorious study linking the diabetes drug with cardiovascular risks, including heart attack. The FDA ratcheted up warnings on the drug, but some experts continue to call for its withdrawal. GSK maintains the drug is safe if used as directed. Skeptics were wondering how Dendreon would be able to supply patients its new prostate cancer vaccine, Provenge. Currently, Dendreon is only able to supply 2,000 courses of treatment for Provenge's first 12 months on the market. To beef up production, the company has signed up GlaxoSmithKline to produce the antigen used to make Provenge, with the first delivery scheduled for next August. Dendrion's first plant, now working at around 25% capacity, is expected to be going full blast sometime next year, with construction complete on 2 other plants by mid-year. Initial demand has outstripped supply, and that can continue as insurers are agreeing to cover the $93,000 cost of treatment for each Provenge patient. Time for some quick hits now, and while some economists think that the recession is over, or even ended last year, behind me, plenty of undeveloped lots that show the proof is in the pudding. We're not out of this thing yet. Adding to that, Abbott Labs plans to cut 3,000 jobs as it absorbs Belgium's Solvay Pharma, which it bought for $6.2 billion earlier this year. Most of the staffers losing their jobs will be ex-Solvay workers, primarily located in Europe. Solvay's Marietta, Georgia headquarters will also be closed. It's 3% of Abbott's workforce and among the largest layoffs in company history. The cuts shouldn't surprise anyone, as the company did say it anticipated this move in the wake of its Solvay buyout. Ranbaxy Labs will have first-to-market exclusivity on a generic version of Eisai's Alzheimer treatment Aricept. That's 180 days of marketing the copycat drug without other generic competitors. Analysts say that could make a $300 million difference to Ranbaxy's bottom line. The company can launch its version as early as November 25th when the patent expires. Good news for Boehringer Ingelheim in its quest to gain an approval for a new blockbuster blood thinner. An FDA advisory panel voted 9-0 to support its application for Pradaxa, though they can't agree on the dosage amount. The company hopes both 110 and 150 milligram doses will get the nod, giving it a shot at a larger share of the multi-billion-dollar market that awaits a successor to warfarin. A decision on Pradaxa is expected by October 19th. The incredible edible egg may have new competition this flu season. The Fraunhofer Center for Molecular Biotechnology and iBio have found a new possibility for H1N1 vaccines that could greatly shorten vaccine production time from months to weeks. Rather than using traditional vaccine ingredients, the Newark, New Jersey-based center uses gene-infused tobacco-type plants to create proteins used in their swine flu vaccine. So far, it's working. Researchers have started a clinical trial at the Walter Reed Army Institute focusing on safety and proper dosage. Boston Scientific is buying Sunnyvale, California-based Asthmatics for $443 million, with $193 million of that guaranteed and paid up front. The rest is contingent upon revenue milestones through 2019. Asthmatics' signature product, the Alair bronchial thermoplasty system, has received FDA approval. Irving, Texas-based Reata Pharmaceuticals will get $450 million in upfront and near-term cash from Abbott Labs. In exchange, Abbott gets the ex-U.S. licensing rights to the mid-stage chronic kidney disease drug bardoxolone. Abbott gets an equity stake in Reata, along with licensing rights to other compounds in the pipeline, while Reata could gain additional milestones plus royalties on any approved product. Icagen will get $5 million from Pfizer after the two companies agreed to extend their deal by a year. This is the second extension for Icagen, which remains eligible for $359 million in milestones. Shanghai-based Microport Scientific has secured nearly $200 million after selling 252 million shares in an initial public offering in Hong Kong. The company makes heart stents and less invasive devices used for treating vascular diseases. Contipi has been acquired by Procter & Gamble for $100 million. The startup develops disposable vaginal devices that reduce or prevent urinary incontinence. A reminder now that we're only a few weeks away from AdvaMed 2010, the MedTech conference, and Beaker will be there. This October, life sciences CEOs and executives from around the world will gather in Washington, D.C. for AdvaMed 2010, the MedTech conference. Unlike traditional industry conventions, this conference brings together top industry insiders with a wide range of meaningful subjects up for discussion. From regulatory affairs and reimbursement to IP and business development, if it's important to the industry, you will find it here. Guests will include Dr. Margaret Hamburg and CBS News anchor Katie Couric, along with hundreds of industry leaders. Beaker is an official media partner, and we invite you to join us there. Click on the link on our homepage to learn more and register for your spot at AdvaMed 2010, the MedTech conference. Finally today, researchers may be on the verge of figuring out a way to power some medical devices, like pacemakers, using resources from a person's body. Even the lazy ones, Jeremy. Scientists have successfully tested out a biofuel cell that is fueled by the body's blood sugar and oxygen, which is, of course, abundant in human bodies. And to test this new system, researchers implanted the biofuel cell into a rat. After 11 days, scientists discovered that the fuel cell was producing a decent amount of energy without noticeable side effects. This is the first time a biofuel cell has worked from the inside of a living animal. This type of device is expected to be the next generation of medical devices like pacemakers and artificial organs. But it's not perfect yet. For instance, if the device gets screwy, it may consume too much of the person's glucose. Plus, the power it generates now isn't enough for some devices. Since it can only make 2 microwatts of power for a few hours, this wouldn't be enough to make a pacemaker run. Maybe they just need to raise their blood sugar with yummy donuts. Donuts.
Forbidden donut.
That's it for this week's edition of BeakerBeat. I'm Mike Justice. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. Sit, Beaker. Sit. Good dog.